When it comes to jasmines, the very subtle, immaculate and rich with fragrance. Similarly, these particular bloomers are one of those kinds, the red jasmine. However, meeting up with those challenges where they rarely bloom in most gardens, here I would like to share my secret on how I get my Rangoon Creeper Vine bloom gloriously. Hello, I'm James David and welcome to Garden Chronicles. I had recently spotted a Rangoon Creeper Vine growing by the roadside and I wanted to show to you few methods that urgently needed to be done. Here you can see the flowers are not to its full blooming capacity and the petals formation is not to its par excellence. And also if you can notice, the whole plant is very bushy and the branches and the vine has panned out its maximum growth capacity of growing everywhere. And the few things that I want to mention here, that what is actually needed to be done. Rangoon Creeper Vine does have this feature on its wild side where it will grow crazily, like spanning out every single vines everywhere at the expense of its blooms. So one thing that needed to be done very importantly, especially when growing in a garden setup, is to keep the main vine, especially the trunk, upright and prune off the rest of the branches at the bottom of it and keep it very clear. And this actually helps the plant to concentrate on its full bloom. Pruning is one of the most mandatory and essential thing about when it comes to Rangoon Creeper Vine. The initial pruning process may appear to be brutal for the first round. Believe me, it's not going to be for the soft-hearted. However, after that, it's going to be so rewarding that you would wish that you have done it sooner. As I mentioned earlier, I actually found this plant by the roadside, so I believe either it might be just planted by somebody or it may just grow by itself, being a native plant here in Malaysia. Having said that, one of the disadvantages of unpruned plants is to have a thick bush at the bottom of the ground, which may attract or nest unwanted creatures, especially creepers and reptiles. Coming back to my garden, I must say that in the beginning it was not a very beautiful view. When the plant actually started to bloom, there were only 2 or 3 cascading features such as this. But after the pruning, the plant started to give amazing results. And here I want to share a few of the highlights about the factors of pruning. If you look over here, the main vine that I mentioned earlier, the trunk-like feature, I make sure that there are no new sprouts or vine or branches coming out from it. Only that I just handle it by the one main vine and the branch that comes out from here. Here you can see the heavy growth of it at the back. The second point that I want to make mention here is that fastening the main vine so that it won't fall away under its own heavy weight. So when it comes to Rangoon Creeper Vine, they are actually non-strong plant. They do not have a strong trunk per se. So fastening and tying them up to a support structure is very important. Coming back to the second part of the video here, I would like to share how I propagate my Rangoon Creeper Vine. Here are the prune parts of the Rangoon Creeper Vine, and actually these are the very ideal pieces that can be used for propagation. Few factors I would like to highlight. Choose a healthy stem where there is no sign of infection or visible damage on the stem or leaves, and not too young leaves such as this. Also to take note that the mature stem at least have 2 nodes, because this is where actually I'm going to use it to bury them to grow. So take note of it. Also trim off all these flower buds because they may not be needed, because you want to concentrate on the root growth and the plant growth rather than flower formation. So after selecting all this stem, just keep them aside and I will show you what are the important things to look into. This is the most important thing that I would like to mention. When it comes to pruning material, whether it's a scissors or a cleaver or a knife, please take the trouble to wash it with an antibacterial soap or wash it and wipe it with alcohol before using it for pruning or taking the plant cuttings for propagation. This will ensure that the plant will have a better survival chances in growth rather than succumb to root rot or failed growth. Another personal tip is that I often wash it and place my scissors in the full sun, as this really helps to keep all infection and bacterial rot problems away. When it comes to the branch material, especially for the propagation, do choose a healthy branch. Check out for any infestation of any mites or mealybugs, or also not a damaged parts, but also choose where it is not too old a branch and not too young a branch, something in between. An ideal piece would be something of a semi-green branch, which is very ideal with at least 5 to 6 nodes. Here I'm actually showing what I've actually done. I've trimmed off all the excess material from the plant. Here you can see the plant node where it does not have any leaves. I've actually used 2 of the plant nodes, and I believe that the 2 plant nodes is much more successful in root growth. And also I'm leaving 3 nodes as for the plant material, especially the leaves. I'm actually just keeping about 6 leaves plus, just not too much, not too less, just for them to have some photosynthesis and plant growth. You can also notice that I've actually trimmed off all the flower buds, and this is actually very important. Similarly, 2 of the plant nodes and 3 settings of it. You can also keep it as 2 instead of 3. It actually makes no difference. Over here also the same, then it's actually branching out. I'm just keeping it as the 2 for me to just poke through. This is just a tutorial of how I do it, just for you to have a look at it. One element here is that sometimes there will be too branchy. You can actually remove excess branches. Most probably can have 2 or 3. Over here is this the one that I want to show to you. It is too thin and too small to actually propagate, and there is no root growth, no plant leaf nodes here, and it may be a little bit difficult to grow. In comparison to this, you can have a look at it. This is what it's actually required. Similarly, all this excess material, these are the things that I actually trimmed off, just to show to you that the plants, they cannot be used. Sorry, the propagation, they cannot be used. Alright, let's get back to how I'm going to set them for propagation in the next slide. These are the materials that I'm actually using. If you look over here, I've actually placed the cuttings in the water. You can also use root hormone growth in it. For this particular one, I know this plant is quite hardy, so I'm just planting it as it is. The other element here is, do not keep the cuttings too long in the water. Just at least about 20 to 30 minutes or at least an hour. Don't keep it for 2-3 days. Another most important material that I would like to talk about is the poly bag. Do take note in using this material, the poly bag, for propagation setup. I had tried using flower pots and cups and few others, but found that it's quite challenging, especially when the vine can be a little bit loose and moving and may not stay put and cause the stem rot, and most times the leaf may drop. So however, I find that poly bag seems to be a little bit more flexible, where I can squeeze and hold all the potting material, potting mix inside of it, and keep it more condensed, and hence the plants they put and the success rate of root growth and plant to actually grow stronger is much more successful in comparison to other medium holders. When it comes to soil medium, I'm actually using regular potting mix, something that is well balanced, well balanced mix, not too fast draining nor the water retention type, just enough to hold the moisture and does not become too soggy in long term condition. Daily watering is not essential for this moment, so the concern here is more for root development. However, do check on it on a daily basis, as in case too much water has get into it or lack of water can be stressful for the cuttings to have new root growth. Also, I have tried using perlite and spanning moss as a medium, and I found that it did grow some root structure on it, but the plant appeared to be stressful and in shock when transferred to regular potting mix. So do take note on a long-term factor where the potting mix, consider it as a permanent thing, and they may not do very well in transferring or change of potting medium. So the best what I would recommend is a regular potting mix. So let's begin. For this purpose of this video, I'm just using a recycled poly bag which I've not thrown away. I just want to show to you how I do it. So first, if you are using a new one, fold it such as this in a box shape kind of a thing, where it actually holds when you place the plant on the ground. Actually, it's more like it will come in this structure. Fold the top part of it, and when you place it on the floor, it will actually hold nicely and in a standing structure. Another thing that I want to mention here is that you don't actually have to put in any stones or cotton underneath it. Just the normal regular potting soil mix will do. Here I've already done it. Just want to show to you how it appears to be like. You don't have to really compress it very hard, just loosely and neatly compact, so that there will be a little bit of air pockets in it, so that it will also help the root to breathe. So what I've done now here is that I gently poke the cuttings into the soil mix, and make sure that 2 nodes actually goes deep in and set into it. Over here I'm actually just using 2 cuttings per poly bag. Please take note not to overcrowd the poly bag with too many cuttings. I would actually recommend 2 at most 3 cuttings in one poly bag. Now after placing the cuttings into the poly bag, I would suggest you to compress and hold it tight, and so therefore the stem and the cuttings will not move easily. And this is what I would really recommend to do, to make sure that the stems do not move, and just give a slight press and compress it, and just roughly check and see whether if the plant is staying firm in the mix. This is very important. Just give a slight tug and just see if everything is secured and strong. When the plant cutting is loose and it is falling or falling apart, it will not have a root growth. The first most important thing that is essential here is that you are actually looking for a root growth. So this is how it looks like on a side view. I just want to show to you. So when you poke over here, it will appear to be like this. This is a 2 node cuttings going into the soil mix. As I mentioned earlier, you can also use 1 node or even 3 nodes based on how big is the poly bag. Just for this tutorial, I'm just using 2 nodes. Here I want to show to you what I've actually done 2 weeks ago, where I'm just testing it out and seeing how it actually working out. over here I'm actually used my pruned material, and I also have placed in the flower buds here just to test it out and see whether they actually bloom or take root or grow. So it's more of an experiment, and for the purpose of the video, to show it to you whether it actually works or not. So far in 2 weeks I find that there is no leaf drop, which I find is a big deal, because any sign of a leaf drop means that the plant is actually in a rotting stage. So it is very promising in this 2 weeks time, and I noticed that everything appears to be green and strong, and there is no yellowing of the leaf or falling of the leaf, which is actually a good sign that everything is actually in order. Do place it in a bright shade away from over rain and sun. This is very important, because too much water can cause stem rot, and the whole thing, it will be actually a waste. This is in week 3, and sadly the leaves has fallen apart, partly my mistake, because I've exposed the cuttings in rain for 2 days. It's been raining non-stop for 2 days here, and we can see here the whole thing is a goner. Actually, it actually rotted away. So one of the factors here is the casualty is that too much water can cause these things to happen, and the plant has failed to take root. And all is not lost, though some of it is actually doing fine. I also taken the experiment where I have planted it without using the leaf node, and also it has failed. So what I have actually done here is that I have removed them, and I've actually tied them up with this plant garden wire, and I have made it into more like a ball kind of thing, and I kept it separately away from rain. I'm just keeping it in the shade for another 1-2 weeks and see how it actually grows. I believe it'll be successful as for now, as there is not much of a problem. We can see over here the water is dripping off. This is actually a big no-no when it comes to cutting, because it should not behave like this on a daily basis. So do keep in a dry position, just moist but not too wet. Anyway, I would like to come to my conclusion of the video. Hope you enjoyed my tutorial of how I prune and how I propagate them. I hope that you able to gather some information and learn something new. Thank you so much for visiting, and if you have any questions, do put in a comment below, and I try my best to answer it. And if it's possible, do click like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much, and have a nice day, and enjoy gardening. Stay safe, and thank you so much. Bye.